Well, hello and welcome to our Time to Thrive webinar. It's a webinar that's aimed at, I guess, bringing together the 6 weeks of learning for those of you who have been through the course, as well as those of you who haven't been able to do the course in its entirety, or maybe are just joining us because you're a member of my extended network and you're just sort of popping in to see what it's all about. I've been really pleased with the first sort of version of Time to Thrive. The feedback I've received has been really good. Lots of people seem to be reflecting from it and really sort of challenging they might think about things and the way they might in their life with regards to their well-being. So in session, what I wanted to do was really sort of just have I guess a quick recap, if you like, of the content that we went through, and that was obviously based around Martin Seligman's PERMA model. And so obviously those of you who were through the course and stuck with it throughout, you'll have heard all about these things. I want to again sort of just recap it, refresh it for people who perhaps weren't able to do the whole thing, and then I want to just extend it a little bit and sort of get us to think a little bit about how we think when we're trying to make these kind of achievements. I should have said that ideally, as I'm going through, if any questions in mind, you should find on your screen there'll be a little where you can it says Q&A, and you can type in a question there. I've already preloaded 2 questions that people who took the course have sort of asked, or they've been kind of like a bit of a common theme, if you like. And so if you have any questions that come up throughout it, or perhaps maybe even you've sort of seen our Getting Your Head Around Change program or the Mindset program, have questions from that, now's a good opportunity to have a chat with me there and stick it in the Q&A box. I'm going to talk maybe for 20 minutes, something like that, and then open it up to questions. So yeah, really it's kind of you guys can sort of give questions, then the content, the model is going to be tailored to suit you. So if we were to go back right to the start of the course, and we were talking about well-being, I introduced you, or served as a refresher for those of you who are already aware of it, Martin Seligman's PERMA model for well-being. And what it intends is that if you have these kind of factors, if you like, these aspects at play in your life, then you're going to experience higher levels of subjective well-being. Subjective well-being is often referred to as happiness, life satisfaction, that kind of stuff. So we measure it by measuring your positive effects or your negative effects, i.e. your moods, and the extent to which you say you have a good level of life satisfaction. And so the PERMA model is put forward as a kind of like a pathway, if you like, or a framework, that if you enhance these areas in your life, then you're more likely to report being happy or being satisfied with your life, having a higher level of subjective well-being. So the first area, the P of the PERMA, stands for positive emotions. And I will go to great lengths often to sort of really explain that we're not saying that you need to be happy all the time, smile eagerly. That's not what we're saying. What we're saying is ideally you're going to experience more positive emotions than negative ones, and recognizing the power of emotions. And Jackson, who is regarded as one of the leading experts on positive emotions, has a theory that's called the broaden and build theory. And what she suggests is if you experience more positive emotions than negative ones, then you're able to broaden and build your capacity to think, particularly think of creative and novel solutions. It increases your capacity to build relationships. You think about it, tend to want to gravitate and be around people who are more positive you know, like Eeyore the donkey out of Winnie the Pooh, the negative ones. And you're able to actually build your cardiovascular health. There's a lot of research that shows the correlations between people who experience lots of positive emotions and they have lower levels of hypertension, cardiovascular issues. So positive emotions are important, but we're not saying you need to experience them all the time. Because if you experience positive emotions all the time, like you're happy all the time, that in itself, of course, is a mental health condition. And so we don't really want that either. The next factor in the PERMA model is E for engagement. And what we spoke about in the course was understanding that one pathway to enhancing your levels of engagement is to recognize and understand and utilize what your signature strengths are. Broadly speaking, signature strengths are the strengths, things like creativity, zest, kindness, love of learning. If you know what your signature strengths are, and then you're able to utilize them on as often as possible, then you're more likely to become engaged. You're more likely to reach peak engagement, that state that's called flow. Flow is when you lose track of time, when an hour goes by like 10 minutes. The opposite of flow is when 10 minutes feels like an hour. And the thing about that is, of course, you might experience that at work. You might experience that while you're doing stuff. So this idea of engagement isn't just about being on task and doing things. Engagement in this sense is actually being in task, being so consumed by it that you lose all track of time. The theory goes that if you experience that more often, you're going to report higher levels of happiness and contentment in what you do, as opposed to, you probably all know people who kind of work and watch the clock. You know, they go to work 5 days a week, hanging out for the weekend. So whilst they might still experience good times on the weekend, and you know they're paying, you know, they're earning money, it's, you know, really allows them to do stuff, then you know it's still not, it's not necessarily as engaged as it might be. And I've just realised I've been talking on camera, I think, or oh no, I should do that one. all okay, we'll try again. We'll keep going. Next one. Relationships, you know, happiness. Yeah, you can be happy on your own. Some people might actually prefer to be on their own sometimes. But what we've found and what the research shows is those people who have strong relationships, whether they're personal relationships or professional relationships, whether they're loving partner relationships or just good familial relationships, you know, family. The more strong relationships you have, the higher levels of subjective well-being. It's half the time, of course, because a lot of your relations may well be the cause of a lot of angst at times. But the suggestion is that the more you experience positive relationships, then the more likely you are to report high levels of happiness. And we spoke about something called active constructive responding as a way to nurture those relationships. And in a very short sentence, what that means is when somebody who is important or you're important to them, when they share good news with you, how you respond in that instant goes a long way to determine what relationship increases in terms of its, you know, connectedness, stays where it is, or starts to dip. So, you know, just basically showing an interest and that kind of stuff is really quite important. Then we spoke about meaning. We spoke about understanding their meaning and purpose, and I got you to think about the best way to find meaning is to find the sweet spot between what you're good at, what you enjoy doing, and then crucially, what makes a difference. I think a lot of times we try and get people to make a difference. They end up doing things they don't particularly enjoy, or they're not particularly good at. And so neither of those two things are necessarily as sustainable as they might be. So, you know, again, if we can tap into our strengths, if we can tap into our interests, all those kind of things, and then actually find a way to channel that into something that makes a difference, not necessarily, you know, on a global scale, it can just be on a local scale. In fact, you know, a lot of times when I'm speaking, particularly to younger people, but I think it's equally applicable to adults, is not everyone is able to go out there and change the world, make a difference and change the world. But I am of the opinion that every single person can go out there and change somebody's world. And that's kind of like the essence of it. That's the place to start. Find someone for whom you can make a difference, and see what happens. Because the thing is, when you find that meaning, I shared the story of Jack and Draker. When he found that meaning, drive, he was able to, really, it makes you more resilient in a sense. It gives you more drive. It gives you more purpose. It gives you more reason to keep going and achieve things that, ordinarily you might not be able to. So the last one was this idea of accomplishment, and as I say, it's I think what I was in the course, what I was really trying to drive at, and what I drive at a lot of time with people I work with, either organisations or whether it's individuals, is that I think a lot of the time we don't really give ourselves enough credit for what we might be possible, what we be capable of doing. Like we've all had it drilled into us since we were kids that we've got to set SMART goals. And I think the problem with that sometimes is that they might be too smart, might be too realistic, too time sensitive. And so what we end up doing is kind of setting ourselves glorified to-do lists. And the problem with that is, whilst you might get through a to-do list and go, yeah, good, I've done my to-do list, it doesn't really inspire you as such to go on and really stretch yourself and find what it is that you might be capable of. So, what I sort of am challenging you, I guess, to really think, well, what is it that you've always, what is it that you would love to be able to do, but then you've always given yourself a load of reasons why you couldn't? I touch on that in the mindset course. What is it that, you might always, I was working with a person today, he said to me, I'd love to be able to play the guitar. I'd love to be able to play the guitar, but I don't have time. And I said, well, what time do you need? And he said, a couple of years, to get good. And as soon as, he's thinking about he needs a couple of years. And that's massive. No one's going to find a spare couple of years until you retire, right? But just by changing the thinking, so, well, actually, all you need is 15 minutes. Right? All you need is 15 minutes to make a start on this, make a good start on this, and then see where it takes you. So, I want you to think about how you might tap into that one thing that you've always wanted to do. And assuming it's not something ridiculous, like, you want to represent Australia in the Commonwealth Games next year, because that shit's on, right? It's past. Find something that, if it's a music instrument, if it's a language, if it's a sport you always want to try, whatever, why not give it a go and see what happens as a result? So, I'll tell you why we don't have a go. And we don't have a go because of these, right? So these in psychological literature are called ANTs, or as you can see, automatic thoughts. And the thing about automatic negative thoughts is these are the things which stop us from doing the things we're capable of. And the thing about automatic negative thoughts, of course, is that the clue is in the word there, that they're automatic. There's nothing we can do about it. Everybody has them, but different people can handle them differently. And so, I'll give you an example of an automatic negative thought, right? An automatic negative thought is when you're in your garden and you reach for something in the bushes and there's like a little rustle in the leaves. Now, your automatic negative thought, ooh, snake, right? That's an evolutionary thing because over the past thousands and thousands of years, it hasn't paid well for humans to be optimistic, right? We wouldn't have survived. So inbuilt into us is always this like, oh, freak out, but we tend to do something about it. So there's not many of you, I'm sure, listening who would have ever seen a snake in the garden, freaked out, and then gone, that's it, I'm never going in the garden again. Because that would be ludicrous. Rather, what you tend to do is you freak out, the hairs on the back of your neck stand up, and you kind of go, oh, snake, I best do something about that. I best either get everyone inside if it's, we don't know what kind of snake it is, or, I'm going to move away from, some Aussies I've met even chase the snake, they hit it with a shovel, whatever, right? But the point is do something about the snake. You don't determine that you're never going to put your hand in the bushes ever again. And whilst we've got used to sort of handling those physical threats to us, you know, if you see a spider or if you hear a creaking floorboard in the middle of the night, you know, you have all these automatic negative thoughts, but then you deal with it, you get over it. But the threats to the way we think, like, so physical threats we've learned to deal with, but these other threats can be, I don't know, more malignant, if you like. They sort of stay there and they sort of eat away at our beliefs about ourselves and what we think we're capable of. I want to share with you, by the way, there's loads of automatic negative thoughts. If you were to just like put it into a line search, and there's loads of them, but I just want to share with you some of the more common ones. And I wonder if there's any, you know, some might jump out at you. So before we get into that, I just want to share with you why it's important we tackle them. So setbacks are a fact of life. We know that, you know, you're going to have a setback, whether it's a personal, major, minor, there's going to be a setback. But what tends to happen is you then might have an automatic negative thought about it. You think badly about it. And we're going to explain some of those and how that might impact. I'll give you an example right now. Some of you watching this might think you're rubbish at maths, right? And the reason, 9 times out of 10, the reason you think you're rubbish at maths is because at some point along the line, you had a setback in maths. You might not have done well in a test. You might have been, you know, put your hand up to answer a question. You might have struck, whatever. And automatically, because of this setback, particularly if it was a public one, particularly if it happened in front of other people, you might start to think negatively. Like, so automatically you think, oh, that was bad, that's interesting, you know, it's happening for me. But then if we don't challenge that, you know, if we don't start to sort of recognize what it is, we start telling ourselves things like, oh, you know, I've always been rubbish at maths. I'm never able to answer questions, you know, I'm a bit of an idiot. Oh, I'm an idiot. People think I'm an idiot. What happens is then we carry that with us, and so the next time we do maths, we set low expectations. We go, oh, what's the point in trying? I'm not really that good at maths. Oh, I should find something I'm better at. And so we actually, what we end up doing is we start self-sabotaging without even realizing. We don't put the in we need to put in order to get better. We think badly about ourselves. Sometimes we start creating dramas where there aren't any, just to get out of doing maths. And so what happens when we have our next maths test or maths question or whatever, bang, we have another setback. And guess what? That just proves our point. So it reinforces the automatic negative thought, and away we go again. So rather than a vicious cycle, it's actually more of a vicious spiral. We just start spiraling down. And then, you know, and bear in mind, most of you who think you're rubbish at maths aged 30 made that realization or came to that opinion of yourself when you were 7 or 8. So that's why it's important that we tackle these things. And as I say, I'm going to share with you some of the more common ones now. So one of the most common ones I see is, you know, people catastrophize things. They make a mountain out of a molehill. You know, it's an absolute disaster. It's all ruined. Things are never going to be the same again, right? And the thing about ants, of course, is not just like, you know, ants in nature, is that very rarely do they come on their own. They've always got a mate or 2 or 100 with them. So you think it's a disaster. And so what does then someone sit there and go, really? Is it that bad? You know, and what do? Well, we go to black and white. Yes, it is that bad. There's no room for negotiation here. There's no shades of grey. This is terrible. So now what's happened is we've got, you know, so it could be something as simple as you've had an idea not back at work. It could be as simple as, you know, you've publicly embarrassed yourself because you tried to sing a song and you got it wrong or whatever, right? And it's a disaster. And someone says, oh, come on, mate, it can't be that bad. And you go, yep, it is. Absolutely it is. And there's no talking you down from that. And what happens is the more people try and talk you down, the more you try and draw your battle lines and solidify your position as the worst thing that's ever happened. Once we start to do that, we then start looking to attach it to somebody. So I see this with kids a lot, and it happens as well with adults. But what happens is we sometimes struggle to separate who we are from what we do or vice versa. We struggle to separate what we do from who we are. So if we fail something, we sometimes don't see that as, oh, well, I tried that and it didn't work. We sometimes see that as, and say, geez, I'm a failure there. You know, we can't separate losing from being a loser. And as I say, this typically happens more in kids, that kind of language. But as I say, in different professions, especially in education, for example, a lot of teachers find it very hard to separate themselves from the teacher. And so if things don't go well in their classroom, they don't see that as like a bit of a, you know, a professional challenge as such. You know, it's like, okay, well, I'll get better at that. They'll see it more as a personal challenge because they don't separate, so they personalize it. Of course, in a relationship setback, we seek to personalize it, but often we personalize it the other way. You know, so something's gone wrong and we're looking who to blame. I'm going to blame you. And I don't, you know, I'm blaming you, and this is massive, by the way, and there's no room for negotiation. It is all your fault. This whole thing is all your fault. One of the most common automatic negative thoughts, or behaviors in general, which I'm yet to see any scientific proof of that, you know, we actually have this ability, is this belief that we can mind read. You know, people, oh, she thinks I'm an idiot, you know, which my wife may well agree, right? But, you know, she thinks I'm an idiot. And oh, I know she said that, but I know she didn't really mean it. I could just tell she didn't mean it. You know, we think we know what other people think. And here's the thing, we don't. We have no idea why people do what they do. We have no idea what they're thinking. All we see is their behaviors. And then we try and interpret their behaviors. And more often than not, we get it wrong. Or we make a massive overstep, a massive overreach in terms of what's happened. Now, bear in mind, remember, this is a disaster. Something's gone wrong. It's a catastrophe, right? There's no coming back from this. There's absolutely no grey area. And it's all their fault. And you know why? Because they think this and they've undermined me, they've whatever it might be. One of the comments that then follows in after this, particularly young people, is this one. They overgeneralize their ability to mind read. You know, everyone thinks I'm an idiot. You know, everyone thinks I'm a loser. No one likes me. Everyone hates me. Another overgeneralizing I hear a lot is, you know, oh, you always say that. You never listen to me. You know, and you know, every single time. And it's quite, you know, when you think about it, I mean, clearly that's probably not the time to pick them up on that and say, what, really, every single time. But, you know, but what's happening is that this whole thing just gets built up and built up and built up. And what we end up doing is sort of filtering out all the good stuff. A great example of this could be a project that you might have worked on at work, 6 weeks, say, working with new team members. You've never met them before, or maybe you have met them, but you didn't really get to know them very well, but now you have. It was a fantastic experience, but the end product, bit of a fizzle. Some people will only focus it, so, you know, so how was that project? Ah, it's a waste of time. You know, it didn't work. In 6 weeks, you know, out the window. And the issue with that is that, you know, you kind of see that a lot when, you know, when people ask you how your weekend was, you know, all right, you know, you might have had a great weekend, but we just filter out great stuff. But if something went wrong on the weekend, don't we like to have a talk about that? So this idea of, you know, making sure that, and this was actually, if you remember, it was part of our course where we sort of, you know, took time to be mindful and try and reflect on, you know, what we're grateful for and what's taken, you know, what's good, you know, what's invoked positive emotions, because that's a really important skill, and it is a skill. It's something we have to teach ourselves to do, because as I said, evolution-wise, it didn't pay to be optimistic. So the issue with this is, you know, if you, I've just seen, shall I say, screaming baby, gotta go. Fair enough, off you go. There's, you know, can you see how these sort of all can compound each other? It'd be bad enough if we just thought something was a disaster, but then when we compound that by thinking, well, there's no room for discussion, there's no way back, and then we think it's all our fault, and then we think everyone thinks it's all my fault, and we completely filter out all the positives we might have had, you can see how that very quickly starts chipping away at your belief that you can be successful in that space or in other spaces. And I guess, in the spirit of popular media and language, what we've got to realize is that a lot of the time this is fake news. A lot of the time, the narrative we're telling ourselves, you know what, of course no one wants to have a setback, and of course you're going to get upset, you're going to get angry, you're going to get disappointed, but that's okay, right? That we can live with that, so long as we then do something about it. In fact, I'm more than happy. I like it when kids or people I'm working with get angry or get upset when things go wrong, because at least it means you care. And if you're coming from a point where you care about something, then we can sort it out. It's those people who sort of just sit back, I'm going to toss, mate. We've got a problem there. We've got a lot of work to do there about, getting into them, what motivates them, and, doing a whole heap of work in that space. But what we've got to recognize is it's okay to feel these negative emotions. That is fine. And if it spurs you on to do something about it, it's actually really quite useful. So the idea of ants, for me, one of the most positive steps you could take in this space would be to recognize what are your most common ants. What do you do? Are you a mind reader? Are you an overgeneralizer? Do you like to make mountains and molehills, or are you a real filterer? And once you can name it, the most common one. You won't get them all, but if you can name the most common one, what's the place you jump to when things sort of start going a bit wrong? If you can name it and you can start looking for it, then you know what? You're going to be able to address it. You just, that's it. There it is. I'll let it and sit with it for a day or two, but then, okay, well, all right, I'm going to do something. I'm going to learn from that. Does this mean Trump is an ant? Yes. It may be, but I'm careful what I say because he's got lots of nuclear weapons. So, what I did want to do is, as I said, that was just like a little taste of something about something to try and pull everything together. You can imagine, we threw out that new course, and there's things about, engagement and find meaning and accomplishment. Obviously, your ability to think clearly when your attempts to get better in those domains don't go quite as well. That's obviously quite important as well. But what I wanted to do, as I say, was throw over some questions, and I'm just going to pop into the question and answer section here, have a look at some of them. So, as I said, I posted in 2 questions, and then I'll have a look at Ian's and Lucy's. So, here we go. So, the first question, and this was kind of a bit of a general theme, was what if you're in a position where achieving your work goal relies on others doing their bit? What are the best ways you've found to motivate those that seem unable to be motivated? So obviously I had a little bit of pre-warning because I got this question before the webinar, and the funny thing is, of course, it's a very hard question to answer because motivation it's really a tricky beast in workplaces in particular. And obviously, you'd be aware of intrinsic and extrinsic motivators. So in an ideal scenario, what we would do is we would just go back to basics. One of the issues we have in workplaces is that we try and get people interested and motivated in our goals, in our vision. So if we're a leader or if we're a colleague, we've got an idea, we want it to work. You know what, it's important to us, we've thought about it a lot. Now, can you just get on board and do your bit? The problem with that is a lot of these people haven't spent the time thinking or being interested or being engaged in that space. And so to them, a lot of the time, they're sort of going, well, there's 5 reasons why change doesn't happen or why people get on board. The first is they don't know why. The second reason, why should I? I don't understand why we're doing this. The second one is they don't feel that they're competent enough to. So a funny thing about humans is they would rather remain good at doing the wrong thing than be poor at doing the right thing. They would rather be good at doing the old thing, the that's no longer actually fit for purpose, because at least they're good at that. It's like the kid, but it's like the kid who he'd rather get into trouble than answer a maths question, because he's good at getting into trouble. He can actually handle himself well with an adult in conflict. Can't handle a quadratic equation. It's the same with adults. So if they don't feel they'll have the skills, they'll just play it safe and do what they always have done. Third one is they don't know what's in it for them. Where's my incentive? Ideally, of course, it comes from the intrinsic, but we only know what intrinsically makes them tick by having a chat with them, not telling them what to do. Fourth one is no time or money to do it, no resources, and the last one is having no plan of action. And so, what I'm trying to say is, if you've got the best ways I've found to motivate those that seem unable to be motivated is take it all the way back. Stop trying to sell them something, and I'm going to talk to them. I want to hear what motivates them. And there's a number of frameworks and questions that you can use, and I'll probably put something out. I'll put something out through our platform that can just a little couple of frames that you might use. But essentially, what we want to do is we want to get back to them and say, you know what, this isn't about me, this is about us, and for it to be about us, I need to know about you. So can you let's have a bit of a chat in that regard. It's not easy, because some people don't give a toss, full stop, right? But most people will be more inclined to get involved if they at least feel that they've got some level of autonomy, some level of voice and choice in what it is we're doing. That was that one. How could you break a culture out in an organisation? I'm just going to go to another question before Gillian's, because there was another question here. There was a question. I'm just going to put it onto another screen. It says this. What does it say this? Let me have a look. Oh yeah, timing. So this particular question said, I love the course, thank you. However, on several occasions, I found myself wondering about the timing of it in my life, and I probably have been ideal. I've always found myself thinking that in many ways the PERMA criteria were met, even though this actually isn't the case. And she goes on to say why this is, and it's to do with having 2 young kids, and she's exhausted, on a bit of a treadmill. And she should revisit this once they've gone back into the workforce and the kids are at school and all that. And to that, I would say, look, there's no right or wrong way of doing this. Of course, life in general is dynamic. Well-being is dynamic. And there may be certain times when, if we looked at that per model, when we talk about balance in life, we're not saying you need equal parts of all these. It's a bit like driving a car and you've got a dashboard. Sometimes your petrol's a bit low, right? So you top up the petrol. Another time you need the oil change. Another time you need the water in or coolant. Another time you need to check the air in the tyres. Ideally, if you're going on a long journey, metaphor for life, you're going to take care of those things and top them up as and when they're needed. And so that would be my response to that question. Don't feel guilty or anything, not being able to take part as much as you want or anything like that. Just realise that this is something that you can take with you through life. Okay, questions now without notice. How could you make a culture of ants in an organisation? One of the best ways I've found is to actually talk about it more often. And so what you're really saying is, how can we break a culture that is, a fear of failure? Because we're having these automatic negative thoughts usually after a setback, and we're having them because we feel perhaps we're going to be judged by this setback. Perhaps we're not capable of doing our job properly. So it comes from the top. It absolutely comes from the top. And they have to feel that you can talk about sex in a community, whether it's a business, a school, any family. You have to be able to talk about failures, setbacks, shortcomings without feeling that someone's going to look down their nose at you, judge you, and eye roll, and that's how you do that. Because until you address that, no amount of telling people to think more positively is going to work. This is Lucy. So I've just realised this is a new platform. I'm just getting my head around. I can mark these questions as answered. Very good. Okay. just done Julian's. So this is from Lucy. Feigning interest in someone's new idea can at times feel authentic if it's still worth it. It feels inauthentic because it is, because as you said, you're feigning interest. So that's a really good, that's a real good question. I would say no. We're talking about developing positive relationships. So what I mean by that is, if you want to develop positive relationships with the people around you, then I'm not saying you need to be ecstatic and deeply engrossed in every aspect of their life and, you know, every single one of their achievements or whatever. But it can be a nice way in. And it, you know, one of the a real simple example of this is, you know, if a kid, whether it's your own child or a child at school, comes up to you and says, "Oh, miss," or "Mum, look at what I've built in Minecraft," and you go, "Oh, why'd you waste your time doing that? You could have been out kicking a football." What do you think that does to that relationship? And I'm not saying it's going to destroy the relationship in tatters, but it probably doesn't enhance it, does it? So I'm not saying that you're all going to be Minecraft nerds. I am, but, you know, I'm not saying you all have to. But to what extent, how far could you go? Yeah, why did you show me, mate? How did you do that? What did you do? You know, so I'm talking about being inauthentic, because presumably if you want to build positive relationships, there will be a level of authenticity at some point. It's just about being mindful about how you're going about that. I wouldn't feign interest for the sake of feigning interest. Give a toss, you know. I'll say, you know, I'll listen, but it's that word authentic is important, because if you feel inauthentic, then you probably need to question the reasons why you're doing that, in my opinion. Now, I notice we've got some questions as well, other questions in the chat. Let's have a look. Julian smiling. Why does this have to be political? I'm not sure. Glennis, unfortunately, hang on. Schools politics. Not necessarily about schools or politics. Hang on, there's a chat going off and I don't understand what's going on. It looks like Gillian and Glennis have resolved that. So I hope, just agree. Okay, I'm hoping that that's been resolved. But I'm wondering if there are any other questions or comments even. Maybe if some of you did manage to do the course, feel free to put a comment in the chat box, or if there was any other questions now. I'll just give it a couple more minutes, because I do realise, you know, we do have families to attend to, and don't know what's on TV tonight, but I'm sure there'll be some more interesting than me. So what I'll do, I will just leave that slide on there. I've just actually, I'm in the middle, if you like, of designing a new website, and you guys will get the first look at that. That's cutthroughhu.com. That's where I'm housing my consulting coaching material, well, not materials, but offering things. And if you wanted to get in touch, maybe you've got a question and you feel comfortable putting in public here, then that's fine. Just send us an email through there. But other than that, I'll give it one more minute. If there's any other questions, thanks for putting together, no worries. Now, I'm assuming, Glennis, you're saying to me, will you see me at Generation Next? Not this year. This, because I did a lot of Generation Next over the last 2 years. I think the plan is for me back on the program next year, talking about, I'll give you a little sneaky insight. Next year, I think I'm actually going to be talking about some of my current research, and my research is, what is my research? Good idea. I've done so much of it. It's actually looking at the well-being issues of high-performing students. So they do well at school, but are there other, you know, well-being issues that we might need to consider? And obviously, I'm going in there as objectively as possible, but I'm hoping that by next year, I'm in a position to present some of that at Generation Next. So thanks for that, Glennis. After hearing your comment, I think Lucy put her hand up and then realised, oops, I've put my hand up. So she's done the whole kid thing. Oops, no, not me. Rachel, after hearing your comments, I think the ants maybe more worried about the change rather than the fail. I like the idea of remember. Yes, cool, good. Oh, it's nice. It's good. There's some stuff getting through. That's cool. So look, I don't know if you guys are, if you all signed up to our online platform or not, but if you go through Cut Through HQ, you can do it. It's free to sign up to the platform, which means you get monthly newsletters, you get the Facebook group, you get lots of different things like that. And every now and then I put out a new course, a 6-week course like Time to Thrive, and I'm also a couple of other courses that you can actually get. One's free and the other one is around mindset, and I'm constantly developing new material, not only for individuals but also for teams in workplaces as well. So it looks like that's about it for the evening. Thank you, Ray, for doing the course. Thanks, William. Thanks for joining us tonight. Much appreciate that you guys would give up your time, particularly afterward. Can I just get a quick survey? How does the time after work? Was that better, or would you have preferred to have been during office hours? If I could just in the chat box before, during work or after work, just so I know in the future. I did this because I thought it would be easier, but I realise some people really don't want to be doing it after work. But definitely better after hours. Cool. Yeah, that's what I thought, because a lot of people are teachers on the course, so I thought that's why I actually did it. So, okay, maybe a bit later. Yeah, fair enough, kids. Yeah, netball night. Oh, 4:30 WA is quite yes, but everything's quite double in it, Graham. Better for me. Yeah, of course, families. Yeah, I know. Just finding that right time. Okay, I'll put some thought into that for our next one, and maybe we'll come up with a better solution even than this. Final thing from me. Thank you so much for taking part. It would have been lonely for me to do this all on my own. So thanks heaps, and I look forward to our paths crossing down the track. Cheers. Bye.